The worst part wasn't when my son told me to leave. It was what happened right before that. He looked at me, smiled, then slid a piece of paper across the dinner table. "You should sign this, Dad." I picked it up. It was paperwork giving him control over my bank accounts. My daughter-in-law wouldn't even look me in the eye. And when I said no, my own son leaned back in his chair and said, "Then maybe it's time you stopped living off us and got the hell out." The room went silent. My grandkids froze. Nobody defended me. Nobody. But what they didn't know was that 3 months later, I would destroy every plan they had for my money. My name is Robert Walker. I'm 72 years, and my son thought I was just another weak old man he could manipulate. He was wrong. Now, before you think this happened overnight, it didn't. Betrayal never starts with screaming. It starts quietly. A cold tone, a fake smile, a conversation that suddenly stops when you enter the room. Then one day you realize something terrifying. You aren't family anymore. You're an inconvenience, a burden, a countdown. And the crazy part? I spent my entire life making sure that boy never struggled the way I did. When he was 8 years old, I worked double shifts just to buy him his first bicycle. When he was 16, I sold my fishing boat so he could attend basketball camp. When he got accepted into college, I burned through half my retirement savings to help pay tuition. And every single time, he'd hug me and say, "One day I'll take care of you, Dad." Funny how promises disappear when money enters the room. That night after dinner, I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just sat alone in my car for nearly an hour. Thinking, because here's the thing about getting old. People stop seeing you as dangerous. They think silence means weakness. But silence is where old men become dangerous. And that's when I started noticing everything. The way my daughter-in-law casually asked about my savings, the way my son suddenly wanted to help manage my finances, the way they talked about the future like I wasn't going to be part of it, the beach house, the RV, the boat. They already had plans for my money. They were just waiting for me to die first. That realization changes a man. The next morning, I called my attorney, a man I'd trusted for almost 30 years. After reviewing my accounts, investments, and properties, he looked at me over his glasses and said, "Bob, your family has no idea how wealthy you actually are, do they?" I shook my head. He smiled. "Good." And right there, in that office, the revenge began. 3 months later, my son hosted a giant family barbecue. Neighbors, friends, co-workers, everybody was there. The backyard was packed with folding chairs, coolers full of beer, expensive patio lights, and music playing loud enough to make the whole thing feel like some perfect family commercial. And the entire time, my son acted like he was the king of it all. Laughing loudly, shaking hands, flipping burgers like some proud family man. Meanwhile, I sat quietly near the edge of the yard in an old lawn chair nobody else wanted. Funny how invisible people become when others think they've already taken everything from them. I watched my daughter-in-law walk around greeting guests with that fake smile she always used whenever she wanted something. Every now and then, she'd glance toward me. Not with kindness, not with guilt, but with impatience, like she was already tired of waiting for me to disappear. Then I overheard something. One of the neighbors asked my son, "So when are you finally retiring the old man and taking that RV trip you talked about?" My son laughed. Actually laughed. Then he said, "Sooner than you think." The whole group chuckled. And right there in that moment, any tiny piece of doubt left inside me disappeared. Because betrayal hurts, but public humiliation, that changes something inside a person. About an hour later, my son stood up holding a beer bottle against his chest. "All right, everybody," he shouted. "I just want to say how grateful we are to have family and people who support each other no matter what. Family, support, respect." The words coming out of his mouth sounded so fake I nearly smiled. Then he continued talking about loyalty, about sacrifice, about taking care of the people you love, and the entire time his wife stood beside him, nodding proudly like they were some perfect couple. What none of them knew was that my attorney had just pulled into the neighborhood. A few seconds later, the backyard gate creaked open. The music kept playing, people kept talking, but I noticed it instantly. My attorney walked in carrying a black leather folder tucked under one arm. The second my daughter-in-law saw him, her expression changed. It happened fast, too fast for most people to notice. But I noticed. Her smile vanished. My son's face tightened. Confusion first, then concern, then fear. Because deep down, greedy people always know when consequences finally arrive. The conversations around the yard slowly faded as people realized something strange was happening. My attorney walked directly toward me, not my son, not the guests, me, and suddenly everybody was staring. My son forced a laugh. "Dad, what's this?" I stood up slowly from the lawn chair. My knees hurt. My back hurt. But in that moment, I felt taller than I had in years. Because for the first time, I wasn't the unwanted old man sitting quietly in the corner anymore. I was the man holding all the power. I took the folder from my attorney and faced everyone. "You know," I said calmly, "it's interesting hearing people talk about family." The backyard went silent. Even the music suddenly seemed quieter. My son stepped forward awkwardly. "Dad, maybe this isn't the time." "No," I interrupted. "I think this is the perfect time." That shut him up immediately. I opened the folder slowly, no rush, letting the silence grow heavier around everybody. I updated my will this morning. You could actually hear people whispering. My daughter-in-law looked frozen. My son tried smiling again, but it wasn't working anymore. It looked painful now. Forced, panicked, I continued. Every property I own, every investment account, every retirement fund, every asset I've spent 50 years building, I paused and looked directly at my son, is being donated. A woman near the grill gasped quietly. My son's entire body stiffened. "Dad," he said nervously, "what are you talking about?" I stared at him for several seconds before answering. "Not to you." The silence after that felt enormous, like all the air had been sucked out of the yard. My daughter-in-law suddenly stepped forward. "Robert, come on," she said with a nervous laugh. "You're upset right now. We can talk about this privately." Privately, that word almost made me laugh. Funny how people only want privacy when the truth embarrasses them. I shook my head slowly. "No, I've spent years being humiliated privately. Today we do this publicly." Nobody moved. Nobody even touched their drinks anymore. My son's face had gone pale, and then I gave him the sentence that finally broke him. "You spent years treating me like I was worth less than money, so now you get neither." The look on his face, I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Not anger, not fear, because in one single moment, he realized the future he'd been counting on no longer existed. The Arv, the beach house, the easy retirement, gone. And the craziest part? I didn't feel rage anymore. I just felt people think revenge feels explosive, like shouting, like anger, like watching someone suffer. But honestly, the real revenge happened long after the barbecue ended. It happened in silence, 6 months later. On an ordinary Tuesday morning, I woke up just before sunrise in a small lakeside cabin 3 states away from my old neighborhood. No yelling, no tension, no uncomfortable silence at the dinner table. Just peace. I remember sitting on the porch holding a cup of coffee while the morning fog rolled across the water, and for the first time in years, my chest didn't feel heavy. That feeling is hard to explain unless you've spent years living somewhere you weren't truly wanted. People don't realize what emotional exhaustion does to a person. It drains you slowly, little by little, until even walking into your own kitchen feels uncomfortable, until you start apologizing for existing. And that's exactly what had happened to me. I had spent years shrinking myself to make other people comfortable, talking less, needing less, existing less. I told myself I was keeping the family together, but the truth, I was slowly disappearing. After the barbecue, I left town for a while, not because I was angry, because I needed to remember who I was before all the bitterness. I started traveling. Nothing fancy, just small places I'd always wanted to visit. Little fishing towns, quiet mountain cabins, old diners along empty highways. And everywhere I went, I met people kinder than my own family. One afternoon at a diner in Tennessee, a waitress noticed I was eating alone and sat talking with me during her break for almost 20 minutes. 20 minutes. More kindness than I'd felt inside my own home in years. That's when I realized something painful. Sometimes strangers treat you better than people who share your blood. But life got lighter after that realization. Not heavier, lighter, because once you stop begging to be valued, you stop tolerating disrespect. I made friends, real friends, people who called just to check in, people who invited me places because they enjoyed my company, not because they needed something from me. I even started laughing again, the kind of deep laugh that comes from your stomach. I hadn't done that in a very long time. And slowly, the anger faded. Not all at once, but little by little, like a storm finally moving away. Then one evening my phone rang. I looked at the screen. My son. For a second I considered ignoring it, but something told me to answer. When I picked up, I barely recognized his voice. He sounded exhausted, broken, and then he started crying. Not fake crying, real crying. The kind people do when life finally forces them to confront who they've become. He apologized for everything, for the dinner, for the insults, for treating me like a burden, for letting greed poison our family. And the strangest part, I believed him, because pain changes people, consequences change people. Losing everything he thought was guaranteed forced him to look at himself honestly for the first time in years. We talked for nearly an hour, mostly silence, a few tears, a few memories, and before hanging up he asked quietly, "Do you think you can ever forgive me?" I looked out across the lake before answering, and I realized something important in that moment. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. So I told him the truth. "I forgive you, son, but I can't go back." He cried harder but deep down, I think he understood. Some bridges don't collapse in one moment. They erode slowly over years, and eventually there's nothing left to rebuild. Still, I don't hate him anymore. Hate is heavy. And after carrying emotional weight for so many years, I have no interest in carrying more. These days, my life is quiet, peaceful, I read more. I fish more. I sleep, and every morning I drink my coffee somewhere nobody makes me feel unwanted. That's worth more than money ever was. So if you're listening to my story right now, remember this. Never stay somewhere you're merely tolerated. Never shrink yourself just to earn scraps of love. And never let anyone convince you your value disappears with age. Because one day, people will reveal exactly how they see you. When that day comes, believe them. Then choose yourself. Trust me, that's where real peace begins.